Hey guys, this is Chris from Off-Road Nation 606. So today I'm going to show you how to Hemi swap your XJ and everything you need to know about it. So stay tuned. Alright, so I have got a bunch of comments and some messages and just different people I've talked to asked me some questions about my Hemi swap. So since there's quite a bit of new people watching the channel and some new subscribers, I decided to make a video explaining all the details that you need to know, and I'm going to try to do it a little better than the install videos because I don't think I went really into detail exactly what you need to know. I would recommend watching those videos because it actually shows the process of it, but I'm going to try to name everything best I can. So the number one question that I get is how hard was the swap and how much cutting did I have to do. So the swap, it really wasn't bad at all. Pretty straightforward. The only part that I had to cut on this is on the unibody around where the exhaust manifolds are. I had to notch those just a little bit and then plate behind them, just kind of shorten them up a little. That way I could clear the exhaust manifold bolts. That's the only part I had to cut on it. That and the radiator I did have to trim out. You can probably see it just a little bit, but the radiator does drop all the way down. I did have to trim some of that to make that work. Those are the only things I actually had to cut. Now other people always talked about having to cut the firewall and all this and that, but you don't have to do that. You can make it work. As far as the firewall, I never touched anything on it. There's actually plenty of room behind it too. So I've got me a list here. I'm gonna try my best to explain everything on it best I can. So the engine come out of a 2006 Jeep Grand Cherokee. I would recommend, if you can, to get one out of a Grand Cherokee or a Durango or even a Charger. A Charger would probably be the best one. But I would highly recommend to try to get one of those if you can, but you can always make the truck one work. So I'm going to talk about the radiator first. So the radiator is a 19 by 24 and it comes from Summit Racing. The part number for it is 380346. So I've not had any problems out of it yet. Definitely cools everything down good, and I've not had any overheating problems. It's a 2-core. The only thing I do wish it had a drain plug, but it's no big deal. Just pop some hoses loose and drain it. But it's not like you have to drain your radiator every day. And then I got a transmission cooler. I got one separate because I was going to use the Grand Cherokee radiator, but it was too wide. I think lengthwise it would fit, but it was just too wide. It was going to be around the steering box area. So I went with that radiator, and then I had to get the separate transmission cooler because it's built in on the Grand Cherokee. And then for the fan, I've got an electric fan. I put that on there instead of the Grand Cherokee one because on the Grand Cherokees they're hydraulic driven and I didn't want to go with that. And another thing that you do need to do is change out the power steering pump. You need to change that out and use one from a Charger. And the reason I changed that out is these are a lot easier to get adapters for. You don't have the weird style fitting for the hydraulic driven fan. So these are a lot easier to get adapters for to make the hoses work. So I changed all these out to AN fittings. They're the -6 AN to 6 AN. And then the reservoir, I'm running off a Dodge Charger also. And I use the factory hoses that the Charger has to hook everything up, because all that will work good. So the top radiator hose, it's Gates brand, and the part number for it is 20573. And then the bottom hose, it's more of a flexible hose. It's also from Gates, and the part number for it is 26501. So you probably can't see anything, but for the engine mounts, I got a weld-on style. It bolts to the engine, and then you weld it on however you need to. So I had to make some frame plates to go on the unibody. I did have to make those and just welded those mounts to it. Now I probably could have made the factory ones work, but where the Cherokee is a little bit more narrow than the Grand Cherokee, especially the WK, I had to go with that style. That way I could make it a little bit shorter. So next thing is about wiring. So I'm running the factory harness. All I did is take everything out of the Grand Cherokee and basically just install it in here, because right there is the factory computer. Now one thing you do need to do is you'll have to send the computer off and get the skim deleted to get the security. You will need to have that deleted, if not it will not start. But that's the way I done it with the harness. There is a couple different companies that's making standalone harnesses for these now, but you can definitely go either way. As you can see, I got the factory WK boxes in here. Now for the fuel system, I'm running the factory Cherokee fuel pump, and it's actually got enough pressure to run the Hemi. They're about the same actually. Now this Jeep's a 98, and I know some of them's different, but this one is a returnless style, so I didn't have to run any kind of separate line for that. I know on the older Cherokees, some of the ones that's done Hemi swaps, they're running the Corvette fuel filter, and that's giving them the option to hook up the return lines. But for this, I was able just to tie straight into the factory line, and that fuel pump is doing good. So for the transmission, I'm running the 545 RFE. It's straight out of the Grand Cherokee. So if you do that, and if you decide to run the factory 231 transfer case, you're going to need to get the adapter plate off a Ram truck. Because if you do that, the transfer cases off these will bolt straight up. That's definitely for the 97 through 2001. Not sure about the earlier years. I think their transfer case is a little bit different. But that setup worked for this. I'm sure you could always get some kind of adapter to make it work. So since I'm running the 545, I had to get the shifter out from the Grand Cherokee. I did have to use it to make everything work. And I've got a bunch of fuse boxes from the Grand Cherokee mounted in here in the firewall. And then I tied the factory key switch from the Cherokee, I tied that together with the Grand Cherokee one. That way everything will be on one key switch. As you can see, there's the factory Cherokee fuse box. I've got all that tied together that way. That way when I turn the key, everything in the Cherokee still works, and then the Hemi will start. Then of course with transmission, you'll just have to make a mount to make that work on your cross member, but that's pretty easy to do. But that's about all I can think of for the Hemi swap. You might have to get a 3-link kit or any kind of long arm. I'm not sure if there's room for short arms, but you might be able to make that work. I don't see that there'd be much of a problem with it. But as you can see, there's still plenty of room. Video is probably a little bit dark, but that might not be required. I'm not 100% sure on that. I just think you might be better off to get the long arms for more clearance, especially for the exhaust and everything. As you can see, I still not hooked the air conditioner up. I'm not really sure if I'm going to do that. And the only reason for that is the Hemi is a little bit tight close to the steering box. Hopefully you can see that. And the reason I'm probably not going to hook the air conditioner up is if I run the air conditioner lines, I don't think I'm going to have room for the hydro assist. I definitely got to put that on here. That's definitely something next that's got to happen. And one more thing I just about forgot. I did have to trim this out to put a hood scoop on. That's not necessarily required. It just barely touched. Probably could have just took a sanding disc and smoothed it down until it didn't. But I figure with this Hemi in here, that hood scoop would help get some of the heat out, and it makes it clear a little bit better. It just depends on how you put it in. Yours might not even touch that. Just depends on what height you want it. But it really ain't a bad swap at all. It's pretty straightforward. And now there's starting to be a little bit more aftermarket support for Hemi swaps. Wasn't really much when I first did it. So one thing I forgot when I was filming is I forgot to mention about the gauge cluster. So that's out of the Grand Cherokee. I trimmed a little bit behind there to make that work. The only thing about using the Grand Cherokee gauge cluster is your speedometer will not work. That's because of the speed sensors. Those were on the axles from the Grand Cherokee, and this is a CAN bus system, so not really sure of a way to make it work. So I think what I might end up doing is just taking those gauges back out and just getting some regular gauges. That way I can wire everything up. Probably a lot more accurate too. So I'll probably do that. But just keep that in mind, that won't work if you decide to do that. But RPM and everything else, your temperature, all that will still work. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions about Hemi swapping your XJ, just leave a comment down below. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more.